Glad to welcome Steve Bell with us once again. Steve and I go way back. We just reminisced about being together where he was performing and I was part of the audience, not once, not twice, but about three times. But we won't tell you when because that adds to any thoughts about our age that we don't want added. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, Bill. It's really good to be here. Nice to see you.
Yeah, my pleasure indeed. It was always my pleasure to sit in an audience and see how you worked a crowd.
Mm,
Of all the people having what they call in your business presence,
mhm.
you had it in abundance. There, you would reach people in the front row and the back row, and you brought them all into what you were doing. And your concerts were not just straight music, one song after another. It was about your life, it was about you, and it was about your faith. And it was always clearly entertaining. So really
Good.
appreciate what you've done. And really appreciate too when I learned of the release of your latest song. And
Mm,
we play that on our internet radio station, by the way. Uh, we
awesome. Thank you.
we play all hit music, and we're talking 60s, 70s rock and all of that kind of stuff. And we mix in the contemporary Christian music that makes it to the contemporary Christian music charts.
Oh,
So
good. Thank you.
yeah, so when I say we play all hit music, it includes your music, and a lot of people really get surprised by that.
Mhm.
But the interesting thing is, and you probably would appreciate this, I play, the Beatles, the Stones, and more contemporary than that, perhaps. And then in comes Steve Bell with his song, and it's the context of the music itself. People aren't really listening to the lyrics unless you force them to, and
Right.
they'll boogie along with you and with other artists and
Sure.
colleagues of yours in Canada today without realizing they're listening to Christian music. And
Right.
it's not that we're trying to trick them, not by any stretch, but when people realize that they're listening to a Christian song, first they're surprised, and then
Mhm.
they start paying attention to the words.
Yeah.
What's been your experience?
Well, you know what? It's funny. Like what I like about what you're saying is that, and I understand why we have Christian radio stations and all that, but unfortunately, what it does is it takes our music out of the mainstream. And so if you listen to say a secular artist, say Brian Adams, well, Brian Adams has a worldview. Brian Adams there's something that he's operating out of. You don't have to agree with it to enjoy the music. Mick Jagger has a worldview. Paul McCartney has a worldview. Some of it tips into a religious worldview. But everyone has it. I don't know why Christian music needs to be segregated because of its particular worldview. We should just be in there with everybody else. And, I can listen to a love song and be moved at it, even if I'm not in love with the person that song is written about. Like I don't have to be in love with Betty May, who may not be alive anymore to enjoy a song. I also don't have to necessarily appreciate or even agree to a religious or a worldview behind a songwriter to enjoy the song. So I just take music as it comes, and then if I start paying attention, I kind of go, oh, I wonder if this is what they're saying, and then I can wrestle with that. But thank you. I kind of wish it was more like this because I'd like to be in the mix
Well,
as a
you
song.
are with us, and music is music, and it's either good music or it
Yeah.
isn't. And as
Well,
long
you
as
know
it's
what?
good music, we'll
Yes.
play it. And the fact that you've got lyrics that tell a very meaningful story,
Yeah.
that's bonus.
But that's just who I am. It's not like I've got, like social or political agenda behind it. It's just I'm just writing honestly from where I'm sitting at. So, and when I listen to a song, I mean, I don't have to agree with it necessarily. But I want to feel the honesty of the artist. Is this your story? Is this who you are? That's what I find interesting, right? So I hope, I mean, I have never, not for a moment, felt obligated to write a Christian song. Not in my life, not once. I feel obligated to write a true song. Um, it just so happens that I think a lot about my faith, and so if that's true, that should come out in the music. Otherwise, I'd be suppressing something.
Now, having
But
said all of that, and I understand exactly where you're coming from, but talk about honesty. You go back a long time, as I mentioned, a number of years ago, when Christian music did not have its recognition, did not have its radio stations. You were there before all of that, and
Yeah.
you're still there. So, I mean,
Yeah.
a testament to A, your commitment, and B, the quality of what you do.
Thank you. Thanks for recognizing that. But it's also I'm an artist. I mean, I I'm not doing it for propaganda. I'm not God's propagandist. I've never felt that calling. I feel no need to convince you about anything. I feel an absolute need as an artist to take the stuff that's churning in my soul and, in a sense, incarnate it outside of myself in this thing called a song.
But having
And
said that, we can see in the background in your studio an
yeah,
awful lot of equipment. And even though some of it I can tell is old and, going back into the old days where I was in radio, there's an awful lot of money sitting in that studio. And you had to pay for that. And what I was getting at with perhaps 20 years ago, it was not a lucrative industry to be a Christian music artist. So that's what I'm getting at is that
yeah.
the quality of what you've done has been more than enough to sustain you.
Yeah. And I mean, here's one thing that it really helps in a sense to be a Christian artist is that like the work that I do doesn't sustain itself commercially. If I didn't have people that donate to my work, I this not would have happened. But that's the one thing Christians actually do have as an advantage over, say, secular artists is that I can appeal to my community and they understand ministry, they understand being part of it through donations. So I have been partially funded over the years. I mean, part of what funds all this is, selling CDs and doing concerts and all that. But part of it is that people just wanted to be part of it and they're happy to contribute. So I'm not wealthy. I don't expect to be. If I got in this for the money, I made a bad decision. But, but I mean, I have been fortunate that I've got a life that I've got a house and a car and I'm okay. And I can afford to go see my grandkids and all that kind of thing. But I've also been able to live a life and have a career that's been meaningful and that I think has mattered. I'm quite happy for all that.
Indeed. And I mentioned a bit ago about how you bring an audience into your concerts, into your presentation with stories, life
Yeah,
stories,
yeah,
and the stories of the songs, where they came from, how you
yeah,
put them together. And to me, that was always more compelling than listening to the song. It was, where did this song come from in your heart? And having
yeah,
said that now, Pentecost, the new one, where
yeah.
did that come from?
Came from a funny place. Okay, so are you familiar with Malcolm Guite, the poet from
Yes.
England? Okay, so he's a good friend of mine, and we were going to do I had him here for a bit of a retreat for 4 or 5 days because we were working on doing some teaching at Regent College. And so we were just up at a cabin north of Winnipeg, and we were working on our material for this course we were going to teach. But from there, we had to go down to Seattle, where we were going to do a concert and a Sunday morning service where he was going to be preaching and I was going to be singing. It happened to be Pentecost. And so at one point, we're sort of sitting in this little cabin. He said, "Oh, we should talk about the Sunday in Seattle." He said, "It's Pentecost." He says, "Do you have any Pentecost songs?" I go, "No," and I just didn't. And he says, "Do you think we could write one?" And I says, "Well, we can certainly try." And he had a Pentecost a poem that he'd written, and he said, "Let me read this to you." And so he read me the poem, and right away I could hear, "Oh yeah, that could be a chorus." My songwriting ear knows how to turn a poem into a lyric, which is two different things. And so we worked on it for 2 or 3 hours, and the song came out. It was kind of funny when we finally got the lyric basically wrestled down so that it could be something we could write a melody to. He said, "Can you write a melody to this?" I said, "Well, I'll give it a shot." So he's sitting across the room from me in this little cabin, and he's smoking his pipe like a good Englishman should. And I started playing this gentle, very beautiful Steve Bell-ish melody, like what I'm known for. And at a certain point, he put down his pipe and he dropped his glasses like this. He said, "Steve," he says, "it's Pentecost. It should have a little bit of energy." And so
Let,
I laughed
let the,
because
let
I
the
don't.
winds howl and the tongues speak. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I don't typically write rah songs. I typically write ballady stuff. And so I don't know. So basically, so then he sort of forced me to get out of my own natural zone, and write what's now become the song that you've heard, which again has a little bit more energy. And and so it was good for me. It was good for me to have him sort of push me, to kind of do something I don't normally do. And then only recently it struck me that, oh my goodness, this like Christian radio hasn't played me a lot. I don't typically write the kinds of songs that come out of the Christian music industry for radio, like the hit sort of. I don't typically write those, but it suddenly occurred to me that maybe they could play this one. So we sent it out as a single just a couple weeks ago, and then I've just sent out a letter to pastors yesterday, email saying this could be congregational, like it might be something that you can pick up. So we sent up a package with music and lead sheets to worship song leaders and stuff. So we'll see. I don't know. It's yeah, I'm thankful you're going to play it, but we typically don't get played by radio very much.
This one, you're right. We do. I am, and we will certainly. And it was such a delight to me to say, I know this guy. I've been at his concerts and so on. Because that doesn't always happen when you live in a small community like I do.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, having said that, I sensed right away it was different than what you normally have.
yeah,
You might be considered a kind of balladeer, if you will,
yeah,
a
yeah. And I write more. I'm
storytelling
more.
musician.
Yeah, I write more like ballady, contemplative, that, John Michael Talbot, like more that kind of vibe, prayerful music. I mean, I have a couple of up-tempo tunes, but only a couple, in over, 40 years. So,
But your poet friend was absolutely right. The song needed to have a little more oomph to it because,
yeah,
let's face it, historically speaking, Pentecost is one of those times in the Christian history that is most meaningful.
yeah.
And
It's well,
without Pentecost, we'd be in a different world today.
it's been called poetically the Big Bang of the new creation, right? There's something literally explosive that comes out of it. Not in the way that we think of explosions sort of decimating everything, but explosive in the way that science now understands the founding of an energy burst that creates everything that we know, and that, Christianly speaking, theologically speaking, something. I mean, however you want to call it, but the cosmos is in need of renewal, and Pentecost is where that energy starts to come. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Now, having said that, with your first foray into radio music, do you see yourself doing some more of that?
Well, yes and no. I mean, not. I mean, again, I've never. I mean, what's made me an honest songwriter is that I don't determine ahead of time what I want to or need to write. So it's if the songs come, they come. So if the next bunch of songs come out like this, well, then yes. But I can't. It's not the kind of thing I can sort of determine in advance. This is the kind of song I want to write. When I actually sit down to write, I'm more in a posture of reception than I'm more listening for what's coming to me rather than trying to control what's going to come out of me. Does that make any sense?
Oh, absolutely.
And so yes, I mean, if the songs come this way, fine, but I wouldn't reject them. But I wouldn't now sort of sit down and say I need to write more radio songs. If they come, they come.
No, and I understand that. I've been interviewing a lot of Christian songwriters,
Yeah,
and they all come from kind of personal experiences, generally
yeah,
speaking,
yeah.
emotional, upset, difficulty, trials and tribulations. A lot of negative, in fact, leads to good songs.
Oh
And
yeah.
and I know that in your concerts, the music that you sing comes from your life stories as well. Not necessarily negative, thankfully. A lot of joy
No,
in,
but
in
but
your
but
business.
not uncomplicated, and it's I mean, it's how you look at it. I mean, I suppose I can interpret a lot of my story in negative terms, and I just choose not to. I mean, I've suffered like other people have suffered, not as much as some and more than some others. I've had traumas in my life, not as bad as some and more than others. It is what it is, but it's how I think, if I may talk from my position of faith, is that, I have understood that I live in Christ. I live in truth. I live in hope. I live in love. I don't possess truth. I don't possess hope. I don't possess love. I live in it. And so I have learned at my best to interpret my experience through that lens, which means that I'm always looking for the gift, right? That like, so yes, some things have happened to me in my life that really do suck and they're awful. But where's the gift? Where's the gift? Where's the gift? And that doesn't mean that you deny the suffering, or that you deny the hurt or the pain or the trauma, or not that those things don't need help and work. But I've come to believe that in Christ, and I also believe there's never been existence outside of Christ, ultimately. But it's not so much that some are in and some are out, is that some of us have learned to see the reality that we're in. And then we can look at those experiences and interpret them differently, and hopefully in a way that gives hope to people that haven't learned that yet.
And your music does give hope to people. It really does. It gives them a reassurance and a comfort, and
Yeah.
especially in a live concert with you, because you knit the songs together with the very
Yeah.
clear stories of life that people can identify with, and that really sets you apart from, well, from the singer-songwriters that are looking to get airplay on the radio. It's a different
Right.
world. Your
Yeah.
career has involved presenting as a worship leader in churches, just
Yeah.
as much as a concert presenter, if not more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different. Yeah, there seems to be a unique sort of charism or whatever you want to call it about my gift. And I don't all I can say is this is what comes out of me naturally, and thank God it does more good than harm. This-
Now, I mentioned
my
at the outset that we met before when you were in Atlantic Canada years ago, but anytime soon coming back?
Well, my manager and I have been talking about that because it's been quite a long time. It might be a decade since I've been out there, which is weird because I used to come out almost once a year. So it's not a deliberate thing. Somehow that just happened. And then since COVID, we're still trying to figure out, where there's an audience. So I hope so. We actually had this conversation last week saying, hey, we haven't been out in the East Coast for a very long time. And we sure miss it because it is a very unique place in the country. And if you don't know the East Coast, you don't know Canada, right? Like it's not everything, but it's a very unique culture. And I think it's a massive part of our DNA. And how we think way more than sometimes it gets credit for. So I sort of feel like even as a public person, if I'm going to be in Canada as a public minister, I need to sort of be visiting these places, but it's also so lovely and so much fun. I've got some great friends out there, so
No
but
doubt, no doubt.
I hope it can come back. We just need to reanimate some connections and get some invites. I think more than anything, that's what it comes down to.
I think the current situation in the culture in North America, the political culture in North America, is making Canadians take a longer, better look at our own country.
Yep.
And, we have a tendency to go south more often than go west or east.
Yep.
And interesting to note, I moved to Winnipeg at one point as a kid. My dad
Oh
was
wow.
in the army, was posted to Winnipeg. He was quickly outposted away, so we were only there for what 3.5 months. You'll be
Okay.
pleased to know that was from December to March.
Oh, so you know Winnipeg then?
Yeah, I know exactly what Winnipeg is. I can remember I even delivered the Winnipeg Tribune on a toboggan in my mucklucks.
Oh my goodness. If you even know that name, that's a long time ago because the Tribune has been on, thing for very many years. Wow. Yeah, no, Winnipeg's a real wonderful place to be because as an artist, because it's central. Uh, but I also agree with you, and I'm glad you picked this up a little bit, like because even in the music industry, the tendency is to want to go down to Nashville to get your support and your validation from America. And that's always I hope nobody hears this as anti-American. I'm not anti-American. There's things about America I don't appreciate, and there's things about Canada I don't appreciate. America is a sinful nation, so is Canada. So there you go. But I'm not American. I do, just having traveled. We are not the same. We think differently. We have different core values. Um, And I think it's really important at this point is to understand those things and celebrate them, not as not not weaponize them, just to know who we are, you know. And so I've been quite happy that most of my career has happened in Canada with Canadian support. I do a little bit down south, not a ton, go down several times a year, but it's mostly been a very humble Canadian ministry. I spend more time in small towns than large towns. Quite happy to do that, and it's a vast country. It's a gorgeous country. Um, we're mostly good people. Um,
Mostly.
yeah, and even and most people mean well. That's actually true, including the ones that I don't agree with on any number of political or social issues. We mean well. We try to do well. We don't always do well, but we keep on hanging in there. And I think we just need to know ourselves, understand ourselves, and develop some resiliency because we're going to need some coming in the near future, I think.
Yeah, we don't always agree, but we can agree to disagree
There we can.
agreeably. How's that?
Yes. Yeah. There. Yeah. Thanks for that last little bit there. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Steve, it's a treat to see you again, to talk with you again. Congratulations on the new release and the radio airplay that you're garnering. Not sure if that's going to make a big difference in your life because I think you've made it quite clear that you like your life and you like what you've been
Oh yeah.
doing. And
Yep.
again, I can say from personal experience, you do it well, and we
Thank you, sir.
appreciate it. May you have many, many blessings to follow.
Thank you. And I hope I see you soon out there.
Count on it.
Thanks for paying attention to what I'm doing. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate your work.